Calum Raistrick, longtime Olympian coach that has coached many athletes such as Niall Darwin, onepunchnaz, Laszlo Karali, Mark Hector, Brandon Harding, and many more.
Two of the biggest ones recently being SLU and GC1, which is a slightly more tissue selective thyroid support. So for quite a few athletes this year, I've been using SLU quite early on in the prep, and also it comes to bite you at the end of the process when you actually want to deliver that look stage. And I think there is probably a consistent trend here in some athletes that have used it in the recent past and struggling to find that 100% look. I feel as though glucose management is starting to rise on that 7-day weekly average, and I still want to sustain the off-season for X amount of weeks or months after that, and I'm doing everything else I can to manage it. Then insulin starts to enter the conversation with Zachariah, who's just turned pro, and he put 34 kilos on in 1 year with me. Their progress skyrockets drastically. And the cool thing is, if I can get that athlete just as strong as they were previously, but now with every rep looking like that, the progress will be off the charts. Where do we feel as our weaknesses are? And that needs analysis will determine volume assignment in the off-season and in prep. So for someone like Niall, because his legs, his quads, and his glutes is such a strong body part, he will literally do in the off-season force. There's a little bit of a trend of athletes that are using it and like the stage look having a little bit of a film of fluidity, softness to it.
How do your guys pack in so much quality tissue in such a short time? I don't usually do podcasts at 10 p.m. my time.
Is it 10 p.m.?
I feel like, yeah. And today was legs, so I had to today was legs and another podcast. So I had to cram in all these carbs and shit, man. And I'm fucking crashing right now.
Hang on in there.
Thanks, brother. How are you doing, by the way? Have you been?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Yeah, I'm good. It's nice to be home after a few weeks away.
Yeah. You have been going ham, man. Congrats on all the success recently.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate that.
Do you mind if I tend to start kind of automatically, by the way.
Yeah, all good. Good.
Yeah? Okay. Cool. It's funny, I was actually just listening to a podcast with you. I've listened to some of your stuff before in the past, but I was recently listening to the podcast today, and you were talking about your background, and you're talking about how your parents don't know, but low-key you might have started dabbling with PEDs in university. Maybe ran Anavar for 20 weeks or so.
Who hasn't back in the day?
No, for real though. I might have beat you actually.
Naivety is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Dude, I think I actually ran I think I ran orals for probably doubled your time.
What?
In university.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know what I was doing, and I just ended up joining this coach, and I was like, I don't want to take year, and I just wasn't doing well. Obviously, I got first at regionals, but then at nationals I was getting 16th plus place. I'm not even ranked. So then he was like, all right, take these pills. They're not steroids, and I'm like, fuck, I'm desperate. All right, I'm gonna take him, and it's AIs, aromatase inhibitors, and Nolvadex, Arimidex and Nolvadex. So I'm slamming those as a natty. And then I do another show and I still don't do very well. And he keeps pushing stuff, and I realize I talked to my friend about one of these new pills that he's been giving me. And my buddy's like, brother, that's Halo testing. That's the hardest steroid ever. You're not a natty anymore. Sorry, dog.
You've gone down the deep route straight away.
Yeah. I acted so upset, but I wasn't upset.
Skipped about four levels there.
It was that's why I have this podcast, is so other people don't have to.
When was the first year that you placed?
The first year I placed at nationals?
Yeah.
Fuck, man, I don't know. I feel like the first time I didn't place 16th plus was I think I got 9th or something. And then maybe that was when I was 21 or 22. Something like that. 21 or 22. Yeah. And then I got my pro card in 2019.
2019,
so,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it took a year or so after jumping all of those orals. So it probably took orals for a year.
Hey, it works.
Oh, fuck, dude.
Just don't do it again.
Yeah. Oh, facts. There was something I really enjoyed that you saying and mentioning before in the podcast with Fuad, but you guys were discussing gut health, and I like that you kind of went a little bit deep on how many athletes in the peak off season may need to upregulate the amount of acids and enzymes to adjust the level of food, especially the protein intake that they're taking in.
Yeah.
Which I think is an important thing because especially a lot of older, longer coaches have just had this history of some insane protein intakes. And I think I know that some of them have kind of adjusted it over the years, especially with how I feel like common bodybuilding knowledge has progressed in the last few years. But I'm still definitely seeing some numbers above 1.5 times someone's weight, sometimes up to 2 times their weight. So I guess what have you seen in your own clients and how have you felt? I'm sure it ranges quite a lot, but is there like an average intake per body weight that you kind of see it land at where gut health seems to be okay and they're still maximizing the protein synthesis potentially from the diet?
Yeah. I think protein is protein's a macronutrient where I feel any additional return we get beyond what we can maximally stimulate muscle protein synthesis in a given time frame, it is just making our life harder in the off season to sustain the level of food that we need to take on board for athletes to grow. And one of the biggest things I learned a lot from, don't know if you've heard of a guy called Luke Lehman. He runs a company called Muscle Nerds in Australia, but I learned a lot from Luke in the earlier days. And
that's cool because I know Luke personally.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I met him through Ali Gilbert. And,
yes.
Yeah, we hung out in person for a bit, and he's a funny guy. Yeah,
good guy. But when we first entered the industry, and this wasn't even coaching athletes, this is coaching general population mainly. There was always a deeper understanding of the impact the nervous system has on digestion, and also a lot of coaches are a lot of bodybuilders, are busy people. They're people that are pretty stressed in work life or the process they have within the bodybuilding. So managing that side is good. Is important to understand. Eating on a low stress state, chewing food thoroughly, managing that parasympathetic and sympathetic switch, and making sure we are consuming meals in the right state. But also just the thought process in the off season that we are not what we eat, we are what we assimilate, right? We are what we can actually process in the first place. And a lot of bodybuilders, a lot of athletes will spend long periods of time through the year with consistent GI distress, with consistent bloating, with consistent stool irregularity. And they're all just telltale signs that the calories that we are consuming, if you're consuming 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 calories in the off season, we're not actually benefiting and leveraging the full amount of caloric intake in that phase. So I think from my side, it's really a case of trying to look at being able to capitalize on all of the calories that we're consuming and being a little bit more conservative with adding them in. So I'm a little bit more gradual with how I add calories in the diet in the off season. I keep athletes leaner for a reason. I keep athletes more responsive because probably I've learned in the past of pushing certain athletes too far and then having harder preps as a result of that. And I think once you do that for a couple of years, you start to get an eye for, hang on a minute, if we actually keep you a little bit tighter in the off season and don't push food as aggressively, I feel as though we still probably make the same improvements, but we don't have as much complexity in prep. But protein is one where if I would say an average, I'd probably say, the large majority of athletes probably sit between 1 pound to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight. But I don't, for most people, I don't see a massive benefit in going above that. I just see a negative return there in terms of their ability to sustain higher caloric intakes and stay in control of it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. That's what I was thinking as well. Unless you're Milos and you just don't have gut problems at all. That's awesome.
Just pound 80 grams a meal and you'll be sweet.
I don't fucking understand, man. This dude's a wizard. Niall's waist, I just don't understand how it's just stayed so fucking small, man. Like, I know from the beginning it starts off as genetics, but like, fuck, dude. Have you guys had to do a lot of work with that, or like a lot of really honing in on what you felt like was the right amount of food for him without causing any issues?
So I think with Naz, and I think there's definitely going to be a commonality, particularly in the classic division for midsection control. Athletes who structurally have a slightly higher rib cage setup, so they have the ability to pull a slightly deeper vacuum as a result of that. And he'll practice. He'll drill vacuums year round.
Mm-hmm. I know Justin Battering does that too.
Yeah, like you just stay in the habit of doing that. He will stay in control of his gut health and his digestive health year round, because again, that's another pretty big factor there. But I think one of the biggest factors for those guys is the weight cap that is there year round and through their career is one big variable that's stopping them from potentially slipping backwards with the midsection control and how hard they can push food in the off season, because you don't have the body weight to play with. Because I know this past 12 months, the off season prior to us starting this prep, I had a ceiling weight of 260 pounds in the off season, because I knew anything above that would create a harder prep for us, because we'd have too much body weight to lose. And don't get me wrong, like if I push Niall, he could probably get to 275, 280 easily in his off season. So there's probably 15 to 20 pounds of body weight that's being left on the table there. But I still need to get back down to the same weight cap when he gets on stage. So it's got to be a game of push and pull there in terms of starting in a close enough proximity. He only runs 12-week preps, but I think his vacuum control is going to be structurally, it obviously plays a massive role. Diligence over vacuuming through the off season and through prep. Diligence over gut health and digestive health, and his food in the off season. We'll get to a certain point, but it won't typically go higher than that. I think if I was to pull his diet up right now, his calories in the off season usually go at absolute peak calories, and they were the same last year as well, because we still got the same weight cap, so it works in a very similar way. Absolute peak calories are about between 5,500 and 6,000 a day. So it's not a little amount of food, but if he was an open athlete, I could push him harder, but he's not. He's got a weight cap, so. You've got to play to the look in classic physique. You've got to play to the strengths that he has. And also for him, because he is still, in the grand scheme, very young in his competitive career as an athlete, it's a case of like actually playing the longer game with him, because he's got years ahead of him where he can continue to climb the ranks and get to the top of the sport. And you've got to coach in that format. You've got to coach in a way that, how do you spend the next 3, 4, 5 years in classic physique without you not being able to make weight? And you can coach in that manner where you just have to be a patient. You have to make patient decisions there in terms of how fast you're moving, which is a blessing for keeping midsection control and keeping its proportions, because you're not moving as quickly as you might do in other situations.
Okay, gotcha. What are those patient and careful decisions that you feel you have to make, considering the fact that he's already at his weight cap, like year after year? What does that end up looking like?
So the two biggest things for those guys will be having to be a little bit more conservative over calories and off-season body weight, and also having to be a little bit more conservative over PEDs. And I won't go into specifics with compound use, etc. But if I were to pull up his protocol, most people wouldn't believe me on what he takes, because it is not a lot. But the reason why it's not a lot is because I know if I were to be more assertive with it and he jumps over for the off season and puts another 5 or 10 pounds of muscle on, he does not make weight for classic physique, because
right, that's only going to hurt him.
Even as of right now, he is ready for stage at 240 pounds, and he's got to be 227 pounds when he makes weight. So if I do one off-season phase where he gains another 5 or 10 pounds, he now can't make his weight cap for classic physique. So that's the longevity part, because it's all good and well me saying to him, right, we're going to get to 280 pounds in this off season, and we're going to start this next prep huge. But then you're in a position where you're going to be ready for stage at 245, 250 pound. You've got to take 25 pound off, 23 pound off before you make weight. It just completely ruins the look.
Yeah.
So a lot of those guys, the irony is, the off-season progress you've made is only relative to your ability to make the weight cap at the end of the prep, because I can put loads of new muscle on him at the end of the prep. But if I have to bury him into the floor to make weight at the end of that process, all of that new muscle is not actually delivered and presented on stage. The same thing goes if you have someone that has a massive progressive off-season, gets to 10 pounds above their cap, and they've already got peeled glutes, they've already got conditioning where they want it to be, and they've got to use a diuretic or hammer themselves in the sauna before they make weight, and now they can't bring the look back in between the weigh-ins and prejudging. Same thing, like you're in a position where those improvements you've made and you've grinded for, like you can't actually show on stage because your body has completely kind of fallen off at the last hurdle of the prep. So that's where the strategy is for the classic physique division. But it is also a good thing, because it keeps the division what it is. It keeps the division looking like that, because the weight caps are there for a reason.
Yeah, no, I'm a fan of the weight caps. Totally not because I'm 17 pounds below or anything.
17 pounds below, serious? Wow.
Yeah.
You got loads of room.
It's going to be a long time. What do you think is the cause of if you had to rank the variables that you believe are the main exacerbators of this, what do you think are the causes of waist growth? Or how would you rank them?
I would say off-season management and gut health, and just overall diligence in managing the GI, particularly with food volume control, and the length of off-season phases would still take precedence in terms of being the number one factor. I do not feel that the PED side, the growth hormone side, the insulin side is the big problem, because the irony is, in those situations, what is also there in abundance at the same time people are using growth hormone at high levels and insulin at high levels is food intake being aggressive. And what is also the commonality with people using insulin in the off season, if they're using insulin, they're also eating a lot of carbohydrates. There's a lot of food volume on their plate. So it's accompanied with one and the other. The biggest thing is just look how long you're spending in the off season, where you're allowing body weight to go in the off season, where you're allowing body weight and body composition to go in the off season. If you're keeping athletes leaner, they're obviously going to get less distension, less GI issues in the off season. So
yeah.
The reason why we see more of that happen in the open class is because there's no weight cap and there's no limits. So guys will push the boundaries there every year. Whereas in classic physique, you might get one off season from amateur to pro, and then you're in a position where you're near the weight cap and you've got to be conservative, and that's why the classic physique division looks like that.
What's up, homies? I'm back at my new place now in Vegas, and we just came out with some new shirts for the transparent merch. None of the basic shit. Now we got some new sick styles, a little bit of a metal and rock inspired, some other shit, and then also a bunch of new colors. So if you guys want to check that out on the site, that's www.icons, spelled AYKONS, icons.com/Niall. That'll automatically apply the Niall discount code and get you right to the site where we have the new designs up. And some of the stuff like the cutoff are 380 GSM French terry cotton, so pretty high quality stuff that were helped design by my boy Dion, one of my best friends in the world. This is the guy that he and I went through a lot in life in the last decade as our best friend Ryan passed away, and I'm really happy that I got to do this with him. But anyways, this is out, so if you guys ever need anything or you have any complaints, I'm fucking here. Just let me know. Let's ride this shit out and grab life by the balls, baby. Peace. In my opinion, it's the first and most important variable is basically everything that you just stated. And then the second one, I think, and I had this discussion with Broderick Chavez, and I felt like his input was very interesting, but total drug load. And not just because GH is the cause of organ growth, or because like insulin and GH somehow just have some kind of like synergistic effect of like blah, 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 whatever. But he stated that, like, potentially because of the sorry, oh my God, Jesus. Damn, dude. 10:30 p.m.
It's late day, bro. It's 10 p.m. You're fine.
Thank you, bro. The exacerbation of pancreatic and hepatic distress. If Broderick said, if you look at, for example, I don't know if it was HIV patients or like alcoholics, for example, anyone that just seems to have this just massive drug load, there's a lot of commonality, and for some reason they just appear to have these bigger waists or like these bigger guts, and it could make sense that, I mean, potentially one of the things that is coming from, say, like the pancreatic distress could be visceral fat, right? Yeah. Or visceral fluid retention. And so organ growth is not like like what that is that's like so minuscule compared to like GI health, what's in there at the moment, and motility, and then potentially whatever could be exacerbated by just total drug use. I feel like that would make a lot of sense as well. But I mean, you know, these 100%. Are just interesting theories to talk about.
And it would also, you know, it's a great point. It would also tie in nicely with why we do see more of that in the open division, because if you look at on the spectrum of milligram per week use, milligram per off season use, the open class is going to have the most aggression there in terms of protocol and the most demand on athlete health. And there's also a trend there with the worst midsection control and the largest kind of midsections of the you know, the whole collective division. So it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. What do you think could possibly be the cause of pro open bodybuilders appearing potentially less lean than by show day nowadays? I think it's just something that's commonly said. I mean, some people like to point out lighting is different, but I don't know if there's any merit to what a lot of people are trying to say, because they feel like these physiques just aren't quite as conditioned.
The number one reason why, well, upper half men's physique, but most specifically classic physique will just have a better conditioning standard, typically. This is purely because of the weight cap, because the guys that are competing in classic physique are more restricted in the off season, and they are starting prep leaner as a result of that, if they're managing it effectively, and they've got to get down to that weight before they even glimpse at what they could look like on stage. So it's a bit of a press. You know, some guys will have to diet lower than their cap. Some guys will be ready earlier than their cap. They've still got to get to their cap in the first place. So it is forcing a lot of individuals to have to push probably much harder and longer than they would have pushed if they were an open athlete as a result of that weight cap. I think in the open, it is very easy to fall into the trap of, you know, if my strengths are round, bubbly muscle, I want to try and preserve as much of that tissue as possible. And therefore, I may be, as a result, being a little bit more reined back in terms of how long I allow myself to dig in a slightly flatter state in prep, which means that I might not be getting as lean at the end of that process. They probably start the they probably end the off season and start the prep carrying more body fat than a classic physique athlete, which, you know, starting body composition in a prep is the number one factor to determine end body composition. If you start prep fat, you're gonna have a hard time getting lean. If you start prep lean, you're gonna have an easy time getting to stage condition. And also, I probably think for an open athlete, there's a greater window of opportunity to load into stage, and there's probably a lot more athletes missing the mark with actually landing the look once they've got into a position where they feel as though they're in shape, because there's no weight cap, there's no restriction there between you've got to make a weight at this time and you've got to be on stage at this time. Guys are probably putting in I'd expect far too much food than they actually need, and then try and pull fluid off with a diuretic, or try and pull fluid off with time or meal reductions. But they're missing the mark a little bit there in terms of fluid management and just pushing carbohydrates too aggressively close to stage as well. And don't get me wrong, like top level open pros, like they're in great shape. They're at some of the conditioning you get in the open class is incredible. But I think athlete to athlete, if you were to pull every single athlete out of the Olympia from open and every single athlete out of the Olympia from classic physique, and you have to look at the conditioning standard in the classic division would be quite a margin above. But all those guys are making weight, and that's a big factor in that.
Yeah, I agree. I can't remember who, but someone recently also stated that they believe that the carb up during peak week for a lot of guys is just going overboard.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think he included that in guts on stage as well.
Yeah, for sure. You look at even in the last couple of weeks, the New York Pro for the classic division was a 7:30 p.m. weigh-in, and they were on stage before 1 p.m. the next day. So you've got, I don't know how many hours that is, but it's not many. You've got the best part of maybe 14 hours, 15 hours between weigh-ins and stage. Like, you can't put a lot of food in that time frame, and if you did, you'd suffer on stage in terms of there's this food in your GI, and you've pushed them up too aggressively. So that's just the nature. That's the nature of the division. So the irony is, someone like Niall that needs to pull down to make weight, and if he's ready at 240 and he's got to be 227, there's going to be a pretty big margin of depletion and like fluid management needed to get him to the weight cap. He needs time. Like the reason why the Olympia, well, he was ill at New York as well, but the reason why the Olympia look was superior than New York, besides the illness, was because we had like 2 days to rehydrate him and load prior to the Olympia. And in New York, we had, the best part of 14 hours, and he was ill and he couldn't even eat meals correctly and drink his fluid because his mouth was in a bad place. But for Pittsburgh, when we got him healthy, Pittsburgh was a Friday weigh-in and a Sunday stage. So we had a day and a half. So my ability to bring that look back to 100% is substantially better just because I've got more time. Like, I've got the whole day, the whole rest of the day on weigh-in day, and then I've got the whole of Saturday to put fluid in and put food in him. And it makes a huge difference, but it's still a lot more refined than if it was just an open book in the open division, because those guys have no restrictions. And if you're an open pro or an open athlete in general, and you're a high-level athlete, by means of being an open pro, your mindset is probably already on the notion of more is better. I've got to be the biggest guy on stage, or I've got to be the fullest I can be to be at my best. And I think some guys fall into a trap of chasing that too much and ending up maybe hindering the look a little bit more than they could have done if it was a slightly sharper look on stage.
Got it. Gotcha. This might be it is a very general question, but what was your original prep plan for Pittsburgh?
Prep plan?
Yeah. Like, I guess, because you said that most of his, or maybe all his preps are 12 weeks.
Yes.
How do you guys normally structure the diet? I'm assuming it's more on a how progress is made basis.
Yeah. So for New York and Pittsburgh was a similar process where the Olympia was last year. The Olympia was actually 10 weeks because we had a longer recovery phase after Tampa between the Olympia prep starting. But the Olympia was a little later in the year last year as well. The New York and Pittsburgh prep was 12 weeks, and I will just two biggest things in the off season are where I start body weight at the start of prep, where I allow peak off season body weight to go, and also where I want the rate of loss per week to be on track to make the weight cap in the first place. So I'll have a weekly number I want to hit in terms of the rate of loss target, and we will get to work at what was 260 pounds. And I want him to be realistically at 2 weeks out at the absolute latest. I want him to be under 240 pounds. So it will take me 9 to 10 weeks to take off the first 20 pound. And then the last circa 10 to 12 pounds of body weight to pull him into the cap is not really a case of darting him down harder because he's already in condition at 240 pounds. Like if I could put him on stage at 240, I would. He's got to be 227. The last 10, 12, 13 pound is more so just pulling him back. So like tapering out cardio will pull off 3 or 4 pound. Tapering down steps and activity will pull off a couple of pound. Removing growth hormone will pull up a couple of pound. And then in the last week or so, we will just pull carbohydrates back a little bit, and that'll be the last bit of weight to go. So to be honest, his off-season food sits pretty high for the large majority of prep. He's probably on 500-600 grams of carbs on average a day for the large majority of the diet. And then when I get him to 7 days out, that will typically drop by 50%, so you'll go down to 200 to 300 a day, and that will then take off the rest of the body weight. So it's a pretty methodical process, but the biggest thing for me is just 10 to 12 week prep, 12 week this time because last year he missed his weight cap, so he had to go back down to 227 from 234. And then it's just hit your weekly target and make sure that within 2 weeks we're in that striking distance. And then I think the biggest thing that people fall into trap of is they'll feel as though they have to push all the way towards the stage. They feel as though they have to like empty the tank and push themselves all the way through the stage. But your body will not peak at its best if it is just chronically stressed by the time you get to stage. And the biggest thing for a lot of guys is you need to actually have the ability to pull back and put the brakes on weeks before that stage comes, because there's a lot more predictability found in the look if the athlete is in a much lower stress state. So output low, lipolytics low, sleep is good. Makes a massive difference. Trying to pick a body that's stressed is extremely hard because it's just unpredictable.
Yeah. I'm very glad that you put an emphasis on that. God, it must be nice to be able to get that low on 300 grams of carbs. Fuck.
But you've also got to think, like, this dude is eating nearly 1,000 grams of carbs in the off season, and he's still got striated glutes.
That's insane.
So for him, like 200 or 300 grams of carbs is, in the grand scheme, like relative to off season condition, is pretty low. It's pretty low.
Yeah.
He rips through that. He rips through that really quickly.
That's fucking hilarious. And then for me, it's like instead of 1,000 and 300, it's like 300 and 100. Sick. How far out do you guys pull out GH and injectables?
So growth hormone will be a minimum of 2 weeks. This year it was actually 4 weeks because I wanted to see where his body weight went without it, because I was aware that it was going to be tight with the muscle gain for this 227 cap. So this year was 4 weeks.
What did you see in that change? 2 weeks versus 4 weeks? Was there very much change, or did it just
because I just got his body weight down a little bit earlier to where I got his body weight down with it out to then see, right, how much of a gap do we need to close here and still have time to do it in the first place. For the large majority of athletes that hit conditioning and prep with growth hormone in and don't have weight caps, I'll leave it in because it's just controlling the look. And pulling it out could potentially harm the look if we lose a certain level of fullness being carried from that growth hormone. But you've got to ask the question: look, do we need to pull body weight off to make weight cap, and do we also feel as though the GH at this moment in time is masking some level of additional conditioning that could be there? And if the answer is no, then leave it in. If the answer is yes, then reduce it or pull it. And then injectables for him. The testosterone directly will be tapered the closer we get to stage, and the DHT will stay. The DHT input will stay consistent, and then at 7 days out, he'll pull all injections there. So, to be honest, if he's doing back-to-back shows, he won't do much in between the shows. It was 2 weeks back-to-back, so it's pretty easy to manage when we're in the US. The only thing I'll keep in at that point will be a little bit of Winstrol and a little bit of Proviron, and that'll just keep them ticking over there, because you've already got the look there. It's just it's just maintaining it for the time frame that you need to after that point.
Right. Yeah. Is it just going to be like just common thing that like we all have to expect to probably feel like shit those 2 weeks in between. Because I know Martin, Fitzwater, and Boss removed all their injectables and GH at least 2 weeks prior to Olympia, and then they also kept both out all the way through until Prague. So bro was like 4 weeks low key without any injectables or tests.
Good chunk of time. Yeah. Look, if it were another athlete for me, if they didn't have a weight cap and it wasn't as delicate of a situation, the large majority of the time I wouldn't pull it out for that length of time, particularly if you're using like propionate and you're using a faster clearing ester. Like it's actually 4 weeks of clearance as opposed to a longer ester that's cleared in, let's say, 7 days or 10 days, and then you've got a little bit of a taper after that. So the large majority that don't have weight caps, the last shot pre-stage will probably be 3 to 5 days. And then if I have shows in between, I would just reintroduce the compounds and pull them forwards. And 9 times out of 10, the large majority of time when I am pulling injections closer to stage, it's not because the injections and the shots are hindering the look, because we've already found the look with the injections in place in prep with those daily check-ins. But I don't want to risk anything hindering the presentation of the look on stage in terms of the amount of times in the past that I've had an athlete 5 days out from stage have a bad quad shot or have a bad rear delt shot or have a bad lat shot where they're like, coach, this I pinned as I would normally last night in my rear delt, and now I've woken up and I've got a tennis ball on my shoulder. Like if you do that 3 days out, you're cooked in terms of being able to manage that close to the stage. So it's just not worth the risk. So a little bit of time is good. But yeah, 4 weeks raw dogging the prep between Olympia and Prague between Olympia and Prague is tough work. It's
he
tough
said
work.
He was feeling like shit. Dude, him and Boss do shit like so fucking extreme. They also did like pro veg, like 2 to 3 weeks out or something for 2 weeks. Just pro veg, like no carbs whatsoever. And I'm imagining like fucking Martin Fitzwater, this big ass motherfucker who always eats at least 1,000 grams of carbs in his off season also. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, man.
I feel like as you're saying though, like sometimes they get such amazing packages, but as you say, I feel like stress just creates such an unpredictable result when it comes to peak week, and then add on top the more extreme fluctuations that you're doing. Like I'm not trying to, I hate saying names when I'm like trying to like make up theories and stuff, but I would assume if you were in Martin's position, I would also be coming in with a very unpredictable result.
Yeah, like stress definitely impacts physiology. Like the psychology of an athlete will impact the physiology, and all these guys, like the amount, and I got a glimpse of it with Niall this year, the amount of psychological management in that situation when you've got that much of a following and you've got that many people commenting online and all talking about you leading in stage, and particularly if things don't go your way on times, which again everyone won't have perfect outcomes at every show. There's a massive load to carry there in terms of psychology, and then also, even more so for an open athlete that's such a big guy carrying so much muscle, any level of unpredictability or anything that's being changed, like creates an extra layer of complexity, because you've got such a large individual to manage there in terms of the fine details of managing a look. And like, don't get me wrong, like when Martin's on, he is like incredible. Like this guy is a guy that could win the Olympia when he's on. And we've seen some insane packages in the past, but then it's like, look, there'll be something impacting whatever the situation is. There'll be something impacting that last few percent in the look, but also for a guy that big in that situation, it is easier to miss the mark in those last few percent with an athlete that's, I don't know what his stage weight is, but I imagine it's not light. With an athlete in that situation than it is with an athlete that is a little bit less heavily muscled, and you don't have to do as much to find that 100% look at the end of prep. If you take a men's physique guy or a classic physique guy who's like 210 pound or 190 pound, whatever it might be. Like those dudes, some of them could eat 5 meals and they're good to go. Like you could be in a position where you put 500 grams of carbs in after you made weight and you hydrate enough and they look insane.
Oh, that's me.
For an open,
well, I don't look insane, but like that's all the food I need though.
But like the distance between like kind of flat and depleted, but in great shape and perfect is pretty short. For an open guy, it's a much longer process there, and there's a lot more that can go wrong in that time frame as well, which is why some open athletes, find it hard to find that consistent 100% look because there's so many variables that you're playing with.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that Niall also got a little bit sick prior to show. How do you manage systemic stress, oxidative stress, cortisol, just all of these things as show comes around, especially when these kind of situations happen?
Yeah, one of the biggest things is just managing that. Like if you look at the allostatic load of an athlete and like total stress load of an athlete, with all things considered in their life, the biggest thing is still prep in general. So you are in a position where getting cardio out ahead of stage is critical. Reducing NEAT exposure, reducing step count, etc. If it has had to go high in the deficit to push body fat low is again crucial. Reducing if you're using lipolytics in prep and you're using any agents and compounds that are like more sympathetically driven, so they're working from pushing the nervous system into a sympathetic state and increasing metabolic rate. Again, tapering them down to a minimum. And then sleep management. The dude must have slept 14 hours a day for 2 weeks.
Damn.
Because all he was doing was eating meals, training, checking in with me, and sleeping.
That's awesome.
Because like his body just needed to try and catch up as much recovery as possible, and the best way of doing that is to put your headphones on, lie on your bed, and just try and relax and sleep. And that was a big factor there because we had the ability to do it. Because when you're out there and you're in prep, like you're not going away, you're not going out every day and doing stuff. You're just there waiting for the weekend, right? So I think the biggest thing for the prep management side is you can view contest prep like someone is landing a plane. Like 8 weeks out, you're at 30,000 feet. And then when you get closer to the show day, it's like you're descending to the tarmac, and it's a gradual process of you coming down and descending. You're not going from 30,000 feet at 1 week out to then dive bombing into the floor, because the body is just so unpredictable when you're managing that level of stress. You're finding the look a little bit ahead of time, ideally, and then just gradually cruising down into the show. And that makes life a lot easier to manage the process.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Someone told me to blow a load the night before show day.
Okay. Wasn't expecting that as the next question. Okay. What's the thought process?
I don't know if I've tried it yet, but I'm gonna keep it in the calendar.
Stress management.
A little bit more unrelated and more of just like, have you ever tried this, or anyone you know? But have you ever experimented with like the good old John Meadows bottle of Serostim before stage, or maybe was it a couple?
I absolutely love John, but I haven't. But he's definitely one of my idols. But no, I've never done it with an athlete. No.
I'm always so curious because it just always seemed to work so well for him, and a couple other people I know experiment with it, but just no one experiments with it.
Yeah.
I mean, Serostim is expensive, yeah, for sure, and hard to get, but I don't know. It just I don't know. I guess I just want to see it happen on the pro stage someday soon.
It's one of those things where it's like when you're that close in terms of stage, it's playing cards that you don't necessarily know how they're going to come out is a very high risk strategy. But yeah, if you look at someone, I don't know how many times John competed, but he was a pro. He was a top level pro for a long period of time, right? I think when you're in that position where you've competed that many times at that level, you're probably more inclined to go. And I think he was self-coached towards, especially at the end as well. You're probably more inclined to go, look, fuck it, let's actually see what happens this time with this, because he's done so many shows that the amount of data you pull in that from doing that is insane. So it's really interesting. But yeah, he had a crazy physique.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was always grainy. I even tried his like shave a couple days a little too early, so that, you know, like the hairs come out just a little bit, it looks a little grainy.
Yeah.
I had like grainy shins. I think it helped a little.
Every little helps.
I would love to see more. Do you ever do mock preps with your clients?
As in mock peaks or mock preps?
Sorry, my bad. Mock peak.
So, yeah, I will definitely trial run where I want the look to land and where I think body weight is reflective of the best look in prep. The large majority of athletes, I would, particularly over the last couple of years, the large majority of athletes I would approach in a slightly more linear manner in terms of delivering on the stage, where the goal is to get the look ready early, and the goal is to then taper output gradually and reduce stress on the athlete. And then I will creep food up day to day until I feel as though the best look is delivered, and then I'll deliver that stage. Someone like Niall, I can't do that because he's got to be 227 pounds at whatever PM the night before. If there's no weight cap, the large majority of those athletes will be using a linear. It's almost like you're starting your reverse before you get on stage. They'll be using a linear approach, because I just find the highest level of predictability when I use that approach, because I'm in control of everything and I am maintaining. Like I just get to a point where the look is perfect, and then I just maintain it day to day until show day. So that nothing else changes. It can't go wrong in that situation. I'm not messing around with anything.
Right.
So it's really predictable to hit the mark consistently. For someone like Naz, who is got to make a weight cap and I can't reverse them, then yes, when I am a little bit different, because I can't find the final look until I'm actually there, because I've still got to get him down to that look to make weight. But when I am adding in at the end of the process, if I'm adding in high days or refeeds, whatever you want to call them, I'm using that to gauge how much food I feel as though he'll need once he makes weight. So the meal size and and that stays pretty consistent, but like down to the meal size, the foods that we're consuming in that meal to then allow the GI to stay in control when we're feeding him more aggressively. And also like total macronutrient intake per meal, and what is that doing to the look in terms of response. It's giving me data to then be able to know, right, well, if this happened on 2 weeks out and 1 week out, and this happened with body weight and this happened with the look on these meals and that meal composition, I know once I make weight, I need to follow a similar pattern to get him from the weight cap up to the look I want him on stage. And that's where that kind of data will be found there. It's not a mock peak, but you're taking the look from flat to full, and it's giving me a gauge as to how long and what I need to do to get it there once I actually make weight.
Do you believe if he had a lower amount of just raw muscle tissue and you were able to do that tapering up process, that he might come in with a better look?
100%. Yeah. Dude, I would put him on stage at 240 pound.
Damn.
And he's got to be 13 pound lighter than that by the time he makes weight.
Yeah. Have you ever, I don't know if this is even a thing for people, but like almost trying to like lose, just like have an off season where like the PED stack is just extremely low, and you are just almost can you lose muscle? I don't know.
So like to put it into perspective, so he's a really interesting circumstance. So his PEDs are never high. In the off season, they're still not high. Mm-hmm. I can only use a certain amount of testosterone with him, and the total milligram per week will never be excessive. The food intake will never be excessive. whilst he's still a classic physique division athlete for however long that ends up being, hopefully the longest period of time possible. And his training is like really honed in on where, as with any athlete, is if you run a needs analysis on the athlete and you look at previous stage placings, feedback, and like your objective eye as a coach, like where do we feel as though our strengths are on the spectrum? Where do we feel as though our strengths are? Where do we feel as though our weaknesses are? And that needs analysis will determine volume assignment in the off season and in prep. So for someone like Niall, because his legs, his quads, and his glutes are such a strong body part, he will literally do in the off season 4 sets of quads a week. And that is all of his volume for his legs. All of the volume for his lower body is spent on his hamstrings. And then the rest of the volume is spent on his upper body. We grew his arms a lot in this last off season. We train his back at like the highest tolerable volume year round, because that's still the area that, you know, Tyler and said judges asked for in terms of density and more improvements. So the areas we want to get better are always directly reflective within the training program. The training programming is like a reverse engineering of the feedback we've got from that last season. So when you talk about like losing muscle, you know, in theory, I probably have lost a little bit of muscle on his quads in the last 3 years, because he's done 2 to 4 working sets of quads for 3 years in a row. He's not done any more. He's not done any more work on his legs, because I know that if I gave him 8 or 10 or 12 working sets, his quads would explode with new growth. And if I put another 5 pound in his lower body, again, it's harder to make weight, right? So we need to use the volume and really kind of prioritize it to the areas that we most need.
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, how great would it be if you could just lose 5 pounds of muscle from your ass and your calves?
Yeah, maybe one day we'll have to. There's a good example. I don't know if you ever heard of a guy called Tyler Smith. He's a UK men's physique pro. He did the Olympia with me last year. Really, really good athlete, crazy look. But Tyler turned pro. You're talking like decades ago. He's been competing for a long time. Tyler turned pro in open bodybuilding in the NPC. So he was an open bodybuilder when he turned pro, and then he transitioned to men's physique over time. And he's a big guy, huge guy. And he is one where, to make weight for men's physique, he stops training legs at 8 weeks out from stage, because it is the only way we can more easily make the weight cut, because his lower body carries so much tissue, and because he's obviously doing cardio and prep, he does lose some muscle in his legs, because I can't if I let him train legs fully, he wouldn't make weight for men's physique. So that's the situation where, like, some atrophy, as long as it's strategic, is probably beneficial, because it's not being judged. So that's an example of maybe some muscle loss is actually worthwhile.
Okay, cool. Wow. Honestly, we could list out a long list of all the peptides that have helped us. You guys have heard these peptides and these research chems in the podcast maybe a million times. Peptides I've used from APR, such as BPC 157 and TP 500 for soft tissue healing, Retatrutide and other GLPs, mitochondrial support such as SS31, MOTC, 5-amino-1Q, methylene blue, SLU. There's a bunch of others. Obviously, the list goes on and on. One of my favorite things, though, that I've been utilizing, such as during my last prep, that has allowed my blood work to come basically pristine, aside from slightly elevated liver enzymes at about 60 and 130 1 week after the show. And this is after a leg day, because my dumbass doesn't want to skip a training day. These are probably the things that I think are the most important. So this includes like your injectable glutathione, injectable or even just normal NAC, liposoluble glutathione, GI aids such as oral BPC, oral TB, KPV. A lot of these things have probably been very substantial in reducing oxidative stress and keeping all my blood markers down, and thus keeping me as basically healthy as fucking possible that you can be while you're bodybuilding. So I couldn't be more thankful to Mike for literally showing me the ropes and also providing me with all of these things. Even the compounded supplements that he creates for blood pressure and reducing oxidative stress on all your organs, including your cardiovascular system, your liver, and your kidneys. All of these that he creates have been very substantial, honestly. So You can find any of these at his site, aprhealthsolutions.com. And he has offered me a code Niall, for you guys to use, which will offer you a 15% discount off of all of that as well. If you guys end up using those and you like him, please let me know. Shoot in a comment, just give me a DM or something. And if you ever have any problems or any questions, I'll be here too. This is a community for me. Even though I don't have a fucking Discord because I'm lazy as shit, but I fucking should make one. So love you guys, and keep training hard. Is there anything that... Well, actually, before I asked that, I wanted to ask this earlier and I completely forgot. But what are some of the other star pros that you've had over your career? I know that you coached. Oh my God, man! This time of day with the brain farts.
It's 10 p.m. You're good. You're good.
Oh my gosh! And was Mark Hector one of them? Yes,
I coached Mark. I trained with Mark. Mark's a good friend of mine. Trained with Mark for nearly 2 years. Great athlete. Hopefully, I'm confident he'll qualify for the Olympia this year with Patrick because he looks crazy. Mm-hmm. But we worked together in I want to say it was 2022. He did the Arnold, and then I think the Arnold that Andrew won that year. Did Andrew win? I think Andrew won. We did the Arnold, we did France, and we did Italy. I think he ended up doing 5th, 3rd, and 2nd. So he was close at that year, and he's come a long way again since then. So I think this year he'll crack it because he's an athlete that's never been to Olympia before, but he's like one of the best bodybuilders I've ever seen in my life, and he's got like the most unique muscle bellies and shape.
Yeah,
you'll see like just a really unique, crazy aesthetic look as an open pro. Really cool look. So yeah,
those lads, man.
Honestly, crazy. I think Olympia qualifications I've had. Rob Taylor, aka the Barnsley Pitbull. I don't know if you've heard of Rob, but he's a crazy 212 pro, open/212 pro from the UK. Crazy conditioning. Valentin Petrov qualified and did the Olympia in, I think that was 2022 again. Tyler qualified for 2025. Who else was there? I think I coached Darren Farrell, but I didn't actually win the qualifier with him in 2022, but I coached him for the Olympia. Darwin Urib, the 212 pro. Niall, of course.
You're coaching the content creator Brandon Harding too, weren't you?
Yes, Brandon. I coach. He's on and off now. He's just kind of managing life, business, and bodybuilding at the moment because he's a busy guy. But I turned Brandon. I turned Brandon pro in 2020. I think that was 2022. Yeah, again, we did quite a few shows. We did we did a show in Ukraine before the war kicked off. We did a show in Kiev. And then literally 6 months later, everything kicked off, which was crazy to think now. Yeah. Brandon turned pro in Austria in 2022. Again, another great physique, great structure.
Yeah, great shape.
I think Brandon's worst enemy is just himself. Like he's in a position where he spins a lot of plates, and he runs multiple businesses, and the priority to be a bodybuilder year round is very difficult for him to manage. And to be honest, with the progress that he does make and what he delivers to stage, to say that the guy didn't have an off season for pretty much the entire time I was coaching him, it's crazy what he's able to deliver to stage without that level of progress happening year round. So he's got a huge ceiling as an athlete to get better as a pro athlete. But there's been loads. There's loads of good guys and girls this year. We've got a great WPD pro competing this weekend, Sarah Bradley in Louisiana at the Optimum Classic, and then Toronto, who hopefully we can push her towards her first qualification. So yeah, there's loads, man. It's really cool.
Yeah, I really want to see Brandon fill out his frame. I feel like that would be fucking nuts.
He's so far below his weight cap as well. Like he's in a, what did you say? You're 17 pound below it?
17, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's like 13 or 14 pound below. So like the amount, and on his frame as well. Like even if you put 5 pounds on, it still looks drastically different. So like tripling that would be obscene. I think that it's just it's the same with any new age influencer / bodybuilder in this day and age. It's trying to manage your ability in your life as an athlete when you've got so much other stuff going on. If bodybuilding was the only thing you had and it was your life, no problem, because it's what I do every day and it's what I live and breathe for. If you've got so much other stuff going on in your life, and great things as well, not bad things, like good things, it's hard for bodybuilding to take priority 7 days a week.
Yep.
And that's just, you know, it's not my place to say like it's great that he does well in life and he needs to maximize that, but it's also, there's probably a little bit left on the table there in terms of what you can do as an athlete. But you know, such is life. It's just one of those things. Right.
Yeah. It's one of the weird things about being, because like everybody has to make a living, you know, everybody, all the bodybuilders do. They have to do something. So everyone has their own stressors and the shit that they're going through. And it's like, you would think that if you're a content creator or a bodybuilder that's making money through it, then that should be the one opportunity that you can just like relax and focus on bodybuilding. But like me being on the side of that, I'm like, not making as much money as a lot of these other content creators. I'm like in a constant anxiety state. Like, man, I need to fucking get out all of these podcasts and I need to edit all of these things and I need to fucking make sure I'm on top of posting, and maybe I don't want to get too fat in the off season or else no one's gonna support me and buy my clothes because I'm fat. Just a bunch of random shit, man.
It's the daily pressure, isn't it? It's and again, I think most of that pressure is built up in our own minds and made worse than it actually is. But
absolutely,
it's also the pressure itself is also the thing that's continuing to drive you forwards and pushing you ahead. So like, it's a good and a bad thing, really.
What makes you most anxious as a coach?
Most anxious as a coach. Most anxious as a coach, probably missing the mark when it counts. And I think now, especially over the last couple of years, where I've worked with, you know, and this would be the same for any athlete, but the only difference between a higher level athlete is there are more eyes on what you're doing. There are more eyes on them and there are more eyes on you. And I feel the higher you go up in the sport, people are, as with any sport, people will inevitably wait for you to slip up if you get a certain level of success. And you just want to try and hold a standard of your ability to execute and deliver, and just make sure that things are consistent there in terms of the caliber of physique you're delivering stage and the caliber of stage look you're delivering stage. Because the irony is in this kind of world we live in, particularly in the competitive world for prep coaches, it is quite fickle in terms of, regardless of the success you've had, a lot of people will remember you for the times that you've messed up. Or like if you've had 10 guys win that year, the only thing that they'll talk about is the one guy that lost or messed up in those situations. And I think as a coach, you want to do, like, you know that, you know, somewhat your reputation is on the line in those situations, most definitely, because there are a lot of eyes expecting things to happen and expecting an athlete to win or expecting an athlete to place, etc. But you also want to do it for the athlete to be in a position where, you know, if there was negativity in the prep or there was comments or whatever things were said, you just want the athlete to be able to prove to themselves that they're capable of doing it and they've ticked the box. Because every time they do that, their mindset, there's another layer of chainmail in their mindset of things just fortifying stronger for that next time. And if you do that 3 or 4 times, you create an animal for those athletes psychologically. So yeah, I think anxiety wise, it's probably just missing the mark when it counts is the one thing that you never want to happen.
Yeah, man. It's even worse whenever you have those pages like who is the best bodybuilder posting your ass. Shout out to you, bro.
You're getting tagged on a Brazilian bodybuilding page 400 times. Those guys are passionate, I'll tell you that.
Don't wreck me, dude. I'm sorry. I freaking hate it whenever people post the lineup, man, and I'm just like, I don't want to fucking look at it. That's what I tell myself every time. And then at my
it's like a 3-page swipe across that you see in the lineup, and you're like, where am I? And who are these guys? Who the fuck are these guys?
Yeah, dude, my first classic show, I was like, all right, I'm not gonna look at it. And then someone DM'd me like, yo, you're competing against Anton. And I'm like, all right, well, cool. Then I guess I'll just get last place anyways.
You look sick. I remember it. You look really good.
Thank you, bro. Good. I appreciate it. I never had the best abs, so I'm glad that I'm not in men's physique anymore.
Yeah, it's such a big thing. Such a big thing.
Right. Yeah. Like, I loved men's physique back when Jeremy Buendia was up there because I'm like, dude, that could be me. And then
I know.
And they switched it up. A lot.
It's evolved, isn't it? Ryan Terry Alley, probably Kyron this year is going to be up there as well. He was crazy.
Oh my God, it was crazy. Oh.
He was crazy.
Yeah.
He's like feels like he's like reinvented himself a little bit as well, because I think when he had that time off and he's lost a little bit of size, then put some size back on, but he's come back with like even better balance than he had previously. It was insane in person to see that. He was so good.
That's awesome.
And Ali was very, very impressive in New York as well. But I think the overall like size and presence that Kyron had in Pittsburgh was just crazy.
Yeah, for sure. His fucking chest was just popping out in 4D, man.
I know.
Yeah, it's just everything I want. It's big titties.
Crazy.
What aside from the things that we already talked about,
yep.
Are there any supplements that you implement to help reduce oxidative stress or even reduce just overall stress and cortisol throughout prep or throughout peak week?
So I quite like liposomal glutathione through prep and through off season. There are a couple of companies that I'll use that have like more proprietary blends and organ supports. Like in the UK, a lot of it is Supplement Needs or Trained by JP. In the US, you've got like Raw Revive or Morphogen. Depends on where athletes are, but I'll just handpick some key organ support for heart, for kidneys, for liver from those brands, with just making sure some bigger boxes are ticked. Liposomal glutathione I like a lot. And then I guess the rest really depends on access. And, beyond supplementation, the lifestyle management is still going to have the most fundamental impact on the athlete in terms of outcomes. But the supplements can also, offer a little bit of a helping hand there in terms of management, and it's kind of like the cherry on top of that. Nervous system wise, if I was looking at like adrenal management or sleep management, I'm a big fan of magnesium in prep, glycinate magnesium. And then, some athletes like adaptogens, some athletes get on well, some athletes don't. But again, even things like sleep management and cortisol management or adrenal management, cortisol is a tool. It's just mismanaged cortisol is a detriment. And little things like stimulant regulation in prep, lipolytic regulation in prep. So if athletes are using things like Clen or other lipolytics, they're never going to be tools that I am super aggressive with, because usually the trade-off is bigger than the actual benefit that you're getting in the first place after a certain level of dosing. A lot of athletes will, 40 micrograms for a lot of athletes might be the ceiling dose I'll go to, and then I'll use other tools around that. There are lots of oxidative, like more metabolically beneficial peptides that we have access to now that can be great as well. And then the sleep situation, beyond like people taking their sleep stack or their sleep supplements or melatonin or whatever it might be, I think there's probably a trend, not a great, and I admit I did this in 2019 when I prepped, but in prep sometimes it is like, what can I use best to knock me out at night to then fall asleep as quickly as I can and try and stay asleep type situation. And I think a lot of the time, a lot of athletes could benefit from just better pre-sleep hygiene and prep as well, less screen time, cutting stimulants out earlier in the day, little things that just allow yourself to wind down in the evening, which will have a massive impact on sleep quality.
Yeah.
Particularly for guys like us that, you know, how many hours a day do you spend on a screen from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed? Like, I would probably say 90% of my day is in front of a computer. And that's not a great combination. So like,
Right.
at night I'll use like raw optics, like the red blue light blocking glasses, and
Yeah.
use a filter on the screen, and, you know, dim the lights in the room, etc., to create like more of a calm, darker setting. Use some red light at night. Little things like that. When you set habits like that, it does make a big difference over time.
I totally agree with that. So no podcast at 11 p.m. There's blue light flashing in my face.
I was about to say you're a bit screwed today, but you're fine.
I use a lot of the same things as well. I've been doing melatonin at 20 milligrams. I was a little bit convinced by some other people that have been, including Martin, were using it as just another antioxidant. But regularly, it's nice because it really helps helps me keep up with my circadian rhythm, especially when it gets skewed a little bit for a temporary period of time.
Definitely.
And what else was I going to say? Injectable glutathione throughout off season and prep has been like game changing for me. So that's been awesome. Been doing that from Optimize HRT and APR Health Solutions. I used to take this cycle support that had a bunch of different stuff from huge supplements. Like it had just obviously, like a lot of the cycle supports, they have like NAC in it. I think it has a little glutathione in it. And then all the typicals like astragalus root. They have saw palmetto. Like, have you seen all these big ass cycle supports? They're like fucking 9 to 12 pills and shit, and then you just take it every day.
Yeah, if you combine like heart, liver, and kidney, you've got like 16 tablets you've got to take every day.
Yeah, it's a lot, man.
Yeah,
it's a hell of a lot. But I mean, they've helped immensely, so that's been pretty nice. You mentioned peptides, and like I think maybe you said mitochondrial supports. What are some of the peptides that you've implemented that you have felt have been the most effective?
So I think two of the biggest ones recently that have been really interesting have been SLU PP 332, which is an exercise mimetic, and GC1, which is a slightly more tissue selective thyroid support. So for quite a few athletes this year, I've been using SLU quite early on in the prep and also post show to help that post show transition as well. And it seems to just leverage a little bit more of what we're getting out of the deficit in the first place. And the GC1 I've been using. I'm not a huge fan of T3 in prep for a lot of athletes. I feel as though T3 is something that is sometimes it's necessary relative to blood work, but I feel as though it's something that is abused a little bit more than it should be. And usually in those situations, that comes it comes at a cost to the look, not a benefit to the look, because athletes flatten off and lose a bit of life. Their look and get a little bit stringy towards the back end of prep with aggressive exogenous thyroid use. Not a huge fan. Replacement sometimes is needed for guys and girls on prep, and you can just confirm that via lab work. But I'm not a huge fan of relying on thyroid manipulation to drive fat loss, unless it's absolutely needed, of course. And the GC1 has been a really interesting tool there for whether an athlete is using monotherapy like T4 only and GC1 together, or just T4 only. That's been a really interesting one there in prep application. A lot of guys using MOTC at the moment, which again is an interesting one, particularly in the deficit. I'm not a massive fan of the GLPs that everyone is using now, retatrutide, etc. Look, it's extremely effective at doing we did a post on this on our education page the other day. It's extremely effective for doing what it's intended to do, but I do feel as though it comes to bite you at the end of the process when you actually want to deliver that look stage. And I think there is probably a consistent trend here in some athletes that have used it in the recent past and struggling to, because I've had it as well, and struggling to find that 100% look on on stage when it counts. I think retatrutide in particular is actually maybe even more effective used post-show in the reverse phase for regulation of control and the basically setting up the perfect off season. But if we're going to use it in contest prep, I would say it's probably going to need to be pulled 4 weeks out because of the half-life being so long. And if you're having perfect hunger regulation for the large majority of prep and there's no hunger signal in there and no issues, and then suddenly at 2 weeks out, you're hit with all of those signals all at once that haven't been there for several weeks.
Oh my God.
Are you in a position where you can actually control that? Because it's the worst part of prep for that in the first place as well. So just be mindful of that. But I think the cool thing, particularly this day and age now, is there's a bigger toolbox to use when it comes to contest prep application and fat loss in particular. And bigger toolbox, with the large majority of those tools, sometimes the newer tools that are available now not having as much trade-off in terms of athlete health, which is cool. But also we probably haven't had those things accessible enough to know long-term outcomes as well. But you'd think with the pathways that are being used, they're probably a little bit less detrimental than other tools that have been used in the past.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are the causes of the issues that are coming up come peak week and show day from Reta use?
So I think it brings a slightly more lifeless look, and that's probably down to the impact it has on the GI and the slower gastric emptying. So if an athlete needs to consume X amount and that gastric speed, gastric emptying is inevitably slower, the transit of food to response and calories to response is going to be a slower process in the first place, which is not a good thing in a kind of critical point of prep. I think if we're using it in prep and we're seeing the slowing of gastric emptying, we're also seeing impacts on enzymes and acid secretion in the GI, which are probably going to be impacting your ability to process and assimilate food, which is again another big no-no. And I do feel as though there's a little bit of a trend of athletes that are using it and the stage look having a little bit of a film of fluidy softness to it. I think that's probably relative to them not being as hard as they could be with food not doing its job, but that's definitely a trend that I've seen, and I've had it myself with when it first started to come out, and we used it a couple of times with athletes, like amateur athletes running regional shows, etc., to see how they responded, and you know, a lot of the time the application was for people that struggled with adherence in prep. There was something not quite right with the look, and that was pretty consistent across the board. So yeah, just something to be mindful of there. It's a great tool, but something to be mindful of.
It sucks because I've heard this so many times. Well, a lot of times, I feel like multiple times more than once is enough already.
Yeah.
I had this discussion with Grant Romer and Austin Espy that there's obviously people that are trying to pull it out prior to the show, just to make sure that the gastric emptying isn't at a hindrance by the time they do the carb up, of course. And they were discussing that sometimes they feel like it's causing some of these peaks to be missed because the insulin sensitivity almost has a slight rebound as you're coming off of it. And there's a change in the amount that you can absorb. So I don't know if maybe some of these maybe their blood sugar is being raised more than they're having, I don't know, glycogen storage is filled, which some people have said that, you know, if your blood sugar is raising more than how much you're filling, then it normally tends to have a little bit more of a spillover effect and you look a little bit more watery.
100%. Yep. 100%. And also, you know, if we're managing contest prep well and when we're controlling stress well, the back end of that process, you should be very insulin sensitive. You should be in a position where glucose uptake and glucose regulation, particularly postprandial after meals, it should be really good at the end of prep. We shouldn't need tools to improve that, as long as stress is being managed. So Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point they make. Yeah.
Because of all the drama of the last company that I was working with, and I'm not trying to point any fingers or anything, but you guys definitely have probably heard what was going on. I've been a little bit skeptical, to be honest, and I've been wanting to find an HRT company that I could work with and that I could get my blood work done with, and that would offer me some proper guidance without upcharging all of my homies and shit. So there's this kind of crazy opportunity that I feel like the universe has granted, because it's not something that I searched for necessarily, but ended up being through connections with my closest friends. And it's this new company I was working with, Optimize HRT, which Nathan was recently discussing. And I just gotta say, man, I'm really proud of everything that they've created and everything that they're standing for. They're trying to take advantage of the fact that they know what went wrong with the last HRT company and trying to make sure that that doesn't happen this time, if you know what I'm saying, and doing things the right way. So this company is where I am getting my blood work done from, and basically getting all my health measures and protocols for longevity checked. And basically the difference between an HRT clinic and a research chem gray market source is that the HRT clinic works with a 5083 compounding pharmacy. You can get all your peptides and your medications prescribed by the doctor. If you're not getting a hormonal peptide or medication such as testosterone, nandrolone, Winstrol, or Anavar, which you can get prescribed to yourself if the need is shown, such as like osteoporosis or some other muscle wasting disease, then luckily you can get the peptides prescribed to you without having to get blood work done. But they do offer at a $100 membership that includes free blood work, which is normally a $420 panel every 3 months. And with the membership, you also get a wellness specialist that is like your peptide coach that will, with the doctor, give you the best peptide protocol or medication protocol to make sure you reach your goals. And these are goals such as fertility goals, cutting down and getting fucking jacked, composition goals, longevity goals, basically everything that you can imagine that is fucking sick for dudes. The other great thing, aside from getting everything prescribed, which obviously you can show your destinations if you're traveling, your prescriptions, so you're not getting thrown into jail in Tokyo or some shit. It is sent with cooling, needles, and instructions, which is actually illegal for research chem science. And in terms of safety and quality, Optimize HRT does work with a 503A compounding pharmacy, in which the FDA checks for its inflow and outflow currents to make sure that there are no vortexes that cause contamination, which yields the highest threshold of safety, basically. So this is on an opinion by opinion basis. Like, if you decide that you want to go the cheaper route, then normally gray market sources that are research chem sites will normally offer these for cheaper. Since the company is still new, they are offering their peptides at the lowest cost that they can in respect to other HRT companies, because they are trying to get their member base up. So if you are wanting to join an HRT clinic, now is probably the time. And that link is going to be in the description if you guys are interested. You could also use code Niall whenever you apply, because that helps your boy out and gives me a little reference and gives me some creds. So they know I'm sick and that people actually like the podcast, which would be pretty awesome. Since I am helping with the start of this company, I want to make sure that this is the best company that could possibly give us the best experience. So if you guys happen to have any questions or any concerns, bring this shit up with me, man, because I want to make sure that we all grow this to be the best that we can, and we all grow together, obviously, because otherwise my podcast is shit and everything that I've like worked for is like fucking pointless. So that's what it's all about, bro. Is family and brotherhood and us getting fucking yoked. What's your stance on GH and insulin use for classic competitors? Or I guess for the competitors that you've used them with, is that something you tend to do often, or do you say avoid insulin use for most classic competitors?
I think the trap is just falling into the notion of thinking it is like a magic tool. Growth hormone is a great tool, and there are multiple layers of benefits there. Insulin is primarily, if it's being used, it's just to support the environment you're trying to sustain in the off season. It's not a tool that we're using to have some level of magic capacity to build new muscle. So I think relying on it and adding it in as a reason to drive the diet more aggressively or to drive body weight up more is a trap we'll fall into. And I still use it with athletes, across divisions, but it's all just relative to like data we're getting. So if I feel as though glucose management in the off-season setting if we have X amount of weeks to go. If I feel as though glucose management is starting to rise on that 7-day weekly average, and I still want to sustain the off-season for X amount of weeks or months after that, and I'm doing everything else I can to manage it, then insulin starts to enter the conversation as a tool that I can use to sustain the athlete in the off-season in a position of control. And the growth hormone, again, is something that for a classic athlete, you can definitely leverage that tool as assertively as you feel as though you can in the off-season. And then in prep, I would imagine, relative to a lot of athletes being weight cap restricted, it's probably something that's going to be tapered or removed closer to stage, just because it liberates a little bit of body weight for you to wiggle yourself down into the weight cap.
Mm-hmm. Where does timing and frequency fall for you for GH? Do you normally find benefit in using it multiple times per day, or does it only vary in certain use cases? Like sometimes, like during prep, you'll use it fasted in the morning and at night, and then like during the off season, for example, you'll only use it at night. Is there any kind of variance like that?
To be honest, most athletes, unless they have like a specific preference and they've asked me if they can do this, most athletes will just do one pre-bed bolus. Have all of the IU we're using in one dose to create the largest elevation in IGF post application. There's going to be some sleep benefit there, and it's just easier to remember doing it at night instead of having to do multiple shots in a day. And also, I do feel sometimes if the dosing was a little bit more assertive and we're on 6, 8, 10, 12 IU a day, whatever it might be, if we're microdosing that and pulsing it through the day, sometimes it can influence glucose control through the day as well. If we're doing, 3 or 4 IU boluses in between meals or fasted or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So pre-bedtime bolus is usually the route. And then even in prep, if you look at the actual response you're getting in hormone elevation, post-growth hormone use, if you're doing it pre-bedtime, then you're going to get elevations the following morning, right, regardless.
Yeah,
I would just do it. I would just do it the night before. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know some people were just doing IM in the morning, but I think that's definitely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And I've been on the board recently of doing a bolus dose before bed as well. I think I had this discussion with Patrick Tuor because he did have some cases where he would have maybe like 2 GH injections per day, but he would always state that, especially if you're doing it like pre or post or around meals, he had this theory that because insulin is present, but then you also have GH present, this is where like you yield higher IGF-1 numbers. But the issue is that you can only do this sometimes. You can't do this all the time because it's, I think, because of the danger of insulin resistance.
Yeah, maybe for short bouts. And if the growth hormone was a little bit more assertive in the off season, potentially in those kind of growth windows, makes sense. Yeah, definitely could make some sense. I think the beauty is for this stuff, it's like, we are picking at straws a little bit in terms of, what is the margin difference it is making relative to timing versus just the dose that we're collectively having in general through the day. And it's like, is Patrick's way right or wrong? It's neither. You can prove that it's right, and you can prove that there are different ways of doing it. So it's one of those things. It's everyone's just got their own unique spin, but the large majority of the time, I would just do pre-bed bolus.
I would too. For insulin, whenever you feel like that a client may start needing to give his pancreas a break, start implementing it, maybe say that it's peak off season, do you end up using this primarily pre and post workout, or do you end up utilizing this a little bit more spread out through other periods of the day, maybe when glucose disposal isn't at its highest around the workout?
So those 3 windows really are going to be faster analog pre and or post training. And if I were to pick one of those at the start, it would be post-training window, because it's probably going to be the largest carbohydrate meal of the day, and it's going to impact then like postprandial glucose control in the meals thereafter. And the other side of that is looking at a longer analog like a Lantus, for example, within the first meal to then cover a larger distance of time. So if you look at like the blood stability of insulin on a fast rester, it's like a big peak and a big trough, whereas someone that's a longer analog like Lantus is like really slow climb and then really slow drop. So for quite a few athletes in the off season, if I do use insulin, I might start with a longer analog and I'll have more coverage across the day, but like a lot more stability in terms of how aggressively it's acting and how aggressively it's pulling. It's just something that's working a little bit silently in the background, is allowing better partitioning. And it would just be a low dose at the start, and then we could assess glucose trends. And then if I feel as though I'd need to go beyond that, then we could look at, later down the line, if we felt as though it was necessary, post rapid analog and maybe pre-rapid analog as well. Those would be the 3 time windows I'd use for putting it in.
Okay, gotcha. How long have you and Niall been working together?
This will be coming up to the 4th year now.
Damn, that's a long time.
Yeah, because he was. It's a crazy story. He was last place at the Arnold Classic in the UK in 2022, and that I started coaching him after that, and then he's just kind of risen from that. He won Toronto to start, placed 11th at Olympia, won Tampa, placed 5th, and now he's just won New York and Pittsburgh and placing question mark at the Olympia this year.
Where did where was his stage weight at when you guys were first working together?
I think the lowest it got to in Toronto was 200 and I want to say 223 pound, 223 or 224 pound, because it was still a 227 cap. Because he was like he's like in between. One of the athletes where like I might be this or I might be that in terms of height, and we're like using an inversion table. We're trying to get as much height as we can from him. But in those situations, it's like, look, I'm not going to take the risk of you getting there and then them weighing you shorter. So we're just going to go at the lower weight cap. So 227. So yeah, I think it was like 224 for the Toronto prep. And then for the Tampa prep, he was 234. So he put 10 pound on, but he had a higher weight cap from the Olympia because they measured him higher at the Olympia than they did in Tampa. And then this past Olympia, they brought him down again. So he had to go back to 227 for this year. But they say every year, or at least this year, he'll get remeasured at the Olympia. At the only time of the year will be the Olympia where he's remeasured, and he has the opportunity to then move back into the higher weight cap. Because I think when he measured in 2025, he was just like slouched down a little bit and just wanted to get it done. He probably wasn't thinking straight. So he just needs to extend himself and make himself tall, and he'll get back into that 234 cap. He needs to get back into that 234 cap because it makes life a lot easier for us to manage the prep.
Yeah, that's why I was always surprised that people. There was a lot of people surprised that Mike was trying to do things aside from the whole hair thing that people were saying, but that Mike was trying to do things like the inversion table to like gain an extra half inch. Like the stories got so skewed that he was actually like 3 inches below his weight cap or something crazy. And he's just, I'm just like, where did this come from, man? Like there's so many classic competitors that were trying to use methods like the inversion table and more like several weeks out.
100%. You've got to, Mike's another, I know Neil really well. Mike's another example where like the guy's ready well before he makes the actual weight cap, and the only way of getting there is you've got to push the body hard, but you've also got to make sure that you try and get as much of that height as possible to then maximize what you can be on stage. It's like inversion table use and treatment in that situation is pretty commonplace there in terms of athletes managing that.
Yeah. I know Michael DeBull was one of those that was actually able to do it successfully. I think he said he gained like 7 pounds in his weight cap and was able to put it in his back, his lats where he needed it. which is awesome.
Exactly.
So I know it helped him a lot, but what is you and Niall's plan now for Olympia?
So the feedback from Tyler was, so one good thing we had from this year, particularly in Toronto, is he didn't mention arms, he didn't mention biceps. So he was really happy with the improvements that were made to his side chest, and he was really happy with the improvements that were made to his front double bicep with his arms, which was a big focus for us in the last offseason, which is great. And then the feedback now is still, and this is because he just takes up a lot of space in this pose as well, is still a little bit more thickness and density through his back on the rear double bicep. So that really is now our main focus for, we've got 17 weeks until the Olympia. 8 to 10 weeks of that 17 weeks can be spent in a pretty progressive state with training. So it's a case of trying to maximize what we can do in the time frame we've got with how we set up his training, and just bring in more improvements to his rear double bicep. Because I think out of all the poses now, really, I think the rear double bicep is the only pose that he can be beaten on with the top guys. Because I think the other poses are very complete and are pretty hard to beat in those shots. So if we can just continue to kind of nudge things forwards in terms of muscularity from the rear, then we're in good position.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Let's jump to this Q&A real quick, if you're down.
Yeah.
Frankie GTZ asks, how much food does it take to get Niall to fill out after making weight?
Well, this Pittsburgh, we did the day of the weight cap. We did 600 grams of carbs on the first day because we had half a day, and then the second day we did 1,000 grams of carbs on the second day. It was just over. It was like 1,050 grams of carbs on the second day.
Whew. Nice.
Yeah, dude can eat. But the crazy thing is, like, he's posing for me at like 10 p.m. at night after 6 meals, like 7.5 liters of water. He's got like a perfect vacuum at 10 p.m.
What the hell?
All that food as well.
Fuck?
It's crazy because all he eats is like cream of rice, Rice Krispie Squares bars, and jasmine rice because they're processed so quick.
Yeah.
So that's another thing for, like, if you're putting a lot of food in, you've got to pick foods that you can process really well.
You said Rice Krispie Square, like rice,
like Squares bars, like the Rice Krispies treats.
The treats? Okay, fire.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
I think you just had some after legs.
Yeah. That's sick.
Yeah, he does those with every meal.
Because of you, I'm going to add that to my arsenal now. For sure. Maybe we'll take a pic on show day for you. Do you guys do anything else to kind of keep up with his gut health? Like, are there anything that you implement, like, I don't know, like fermented foods, for example?
So a food selection is a big one for his gut. He uses a fiber prebiotic and greens formula in the morning from a company over in the UK called Strom, which is a great brand over here. They make a really good product over here that he uses in the morning, and he uses glutamine year round as well. Like, those are probably the three biggest things. We haven't really had to fix anything. Like gut motility is good, intestinal lining is good. There's no like issues of permeability there. So it's not been a case of this is pretty screwed, we've got to fix it. It's more so, how can we maintain this when food goes up? Which reflects, like, the supplementation for him is, on the more minimal side, which is good. But if things were worse, then they'd probably add more stuff added in, but he just doesn't need to add them in.
Okay. Wow. That is awesome. That is great. Well, I guess whatever you guys are doing with the diet and managing his motility is like working amazing, because bro has like a 5-inch waist.
He's deleted his waist.
It's nuts. Oh, this is another question. Actually, I was thinking, Antonin, he's commented a bunch of times, but I'm sorry, brother. someday you're gonna have to just send me a voice note to let me know how to pronounce your name. Antonin Dit. Anyways, he asked if you on. Yes,
That's definitely not his name, but yeah.
Oh fuck. He said view on orals during prep and how I wanted to twist it, because you've already discussed some on oral use during prep. Is like for guys like Niall, for example, where you're really trying to, well, I guess everybody, you're trying to make sure that you're keeping their waist tight and their GI intact. Where are the issues that you see GI distress being exacerbated by orals? Do you kind of see this very often or not? And if so, how do you manage this?
I think the use is, I think my oral application is pretty minimal in the grand scheme compared to some other coaches. And it's really dependent on, what is that tool there for in the first place? And the large majority of the time, if I'm using an oral, it's either going to be Provaron being tapered up close to the stage to have a little bit more DHT saturation. And particularly if injectables being tapered or removed, that kind of goes in replacement to some degree. And it is going to be a tool there to help retain training performance, and particularly around the training window. So if we're using like an Anavar or sometimes even a Winstrol for performance gain, but it also has a slightly bigger cosmetic benefit. Maybe some athletes will use halo testing towards the back end of prep as a performance stabilizer. But the oral tool usually is just there to have something very quickly saturated and readily available that can be increased or removed at any time to help maintain performance in the training window. Because if we can maintain training performance, we're in a position where we can carry the tissue that we want to carry into stage. So I don't normally see an oral as this is like a game changer in terms of me bringing more conditioning or more massive cosmetic benefit. It's more so a finishing tool there to help maintain control over recovery and performance and prep.
Okay, cool, awesome. And you would probably say that the dosages that you keep it at have been able to kind of make sure that there's no issues during the carb up when it comes to digesting the amount of food that they have to consume.
Yeah, like if it's Anavar and Winstrol, most athletes will sit, sometimes like 25 milligrams, 25 to 30 milligrams a day. Now I use 25 milligrams a day. Some athletes will push it to 50. I know guys can go up to 75 milligrams, 100 milligrams a day, but I'm not sure I see the benefit beyond.
I don't think so either.
Once we go from like 30 to 50, beyond that, I'm not sure what cost to benefit ratio really is there. Cost to benefit. Provaron I would increase more aggressively. Provaron I would happily run at 50 to 75 milligrams, maybe 100 milligrams at the end of prep, particularly if the injectables were removed or adjusted down. But the more harsh, like 17A alkylated orals or other such things, I would. I think there's just too much reliance on them, and I don't think they're doing as much as you think they're doing.
Yeah, no, I actually totally agree with you, and especially when it comes to the dosages that you were stating. Like, I really don't see any benefits going above 50, but there are some coaches that will, for example, like titrate it up like a week before a show, like they'll titrate up 75, and then like a few days before a show, they'll like maybe even go to 100. I've seen before, and I just don't really feel like it's worth it sometimes, especially if those orals are going in around the same time as the food. So, because I just don't really see the biggest change. And look, I'm one of the ones, for example, that I've experimented with both. Like I've done a show without any orals except for Proviron and maybe a little bit of Halo. And then I did a show where I titrated up Winstrol, I think maybe, and I'm not sure if there was anything else, up to 100 by the time the show came around. And then I did a show with 3 weeks 3 weeks of Winstrol at 37.5 mgs.
Yeah.
And then I did another show 3 weeks following that with 50 milligrams a week for 3 weeks. And I think the best, even though that show I didn't like play so well, I think feeling the best and the look I had before we started the whole peak week process and everything, Like 37.5 at 3 weeks was great. By the time I went up to 50 and I did it for 6 weeks, the look got a little bit better and more full. But I think week 5 and week 6 were probably unnecessary and just ended up starting to slow my gut motility more. So I had the most GI distress at 6 weeks of Winstrol use than I did still having maybe like 2 milligrams of Retta in my system. Like that was a much lesser effect than the Winstrol itself.
Yeah, like I've just over the last couple of years, I've got more conservative with the dosing because I've just kind of scratched my head, going like, do we really need to be using this in the first place? In especially with orals, but to be honest, like injectables is the landscape of it's relative to the athlete, but orals in particular, like if you're finishing prep on like a gram and a half of orals only before you even take your injectables, like the level of the level of assimilation that's needed for those drugs to actually do anything is huge. Like you're taking 700 milligrams of Winstrol a week, like it's crazy. But how much of that is actually how much of that is actually like actually being able to process in the first place as well, and what burden is that putting on the body for the end of prep and for the post show phase and the recovery post show relative to the benefit that's given you in terms of the look? I don't think it's worth the same weight, if that makes sense.
I agree. I'm assuming it may depend on the client's situation or the athlete's situation, but do you normally end up going to an oh my god, dude, my brain is dead. A health phase afterwards, or do you ever play around with a rebound?
Very, very circumstantial. If it was a shorter prep and I have blood work at the end of that prep to confirm that they are good, so like say for example that they run a 10 or a 12-week prep, escalation PED exposure hasn't been too high for too long, and blood work is good, then yeah, rebound post show would be worthwhile, because like if we've only been on for 12 weeks, then we might have 6 to 8 weeks there where we can push post show. If it's a long prep and you've kind of taken the body through the trenches to get to stage, and you've also been on escalation of PEDs for 16, 20 weeks, etc., then like the athlete is not in a perfect position to respond in the first place. Post show, you want to be trying to shift the emphasis towards recovery as quickly as possible and try and get that done as efficiently as we can and as quickly as we can, and get back to growth as quickly as we can. Because maybe if we, in that said athlete that's been on prep for 20 weeks and has been on cycle for 20 weeks, maybe we try and run a 8-week post-show rebound there. The response is so-so in the first place, but also it then takes us 4 months after that to then get the health markers back into a position they need to be to start the off season. Whereas if we finished the prep and did a 6 or an 8 week recovery phase straight away, we could be back in 6 to 8 weeks. We don't need to take the 4 months of recovery. So what is the route towards being in the best position possible as quickly as possible? Usually it's pull it back.
Plus I also believe that like even though you are, oh man, this is rough. A fucking midnight. Even though you are coming off anabolics and you are trying to stay lean, I'm assuming before the actual off season starts, just to maintain that higher level of insulin sensitivity, you are still titrating food into a pretty great degree, which I think has its own level of anabolism, which I think 100%. Is a good way to excuse coming off of anabolics in order to maintain your muscle mass. And then also in the end, like the muscle memory thing is also a pretty big real thing anyways. So
yeah.
I think
like the leveraging of more calories and better sleep and recovery will do way more than X milligram per week of X compound will anyway. So, 100%. I definitely agree with that. Definitely agree.
Jake Oliver 21 says, explain your training philosophy. I feel like the rest of the industry is so far behind.
So training for me is you split the athlete into a like as accurate as you can needs analysis for judging feedback placings, and like your objective assessment of their physique. And then I will just assign volume tiers for those muscle groups. So areas that he is strong in will run on lower volume at this moment in time. Areas that he's weak in will run on higher volume. I've got a reference as to where like working sets per week will probably start, and then I could just adjust that based on feedback from the athlete, how they're recovering, how they're responding. And the actual makeup of the sessions is just like a reverse engineered plan of the needs analysis. Like, where do we need to improve most? What can that muscle group tolerate in terms of volume across the week? And how are we picking movements that fit and align with the athlete's structure, like anatomical structure, and like where they can execute best at. So I'm not a high or a low volume guy. I don't put myself in any kind of camp, so to speak. It's more so what's relative to the athlete. The volume for me is probably lower than most, because I don't feel as though if the quality of the work is high, we need a lot of work in the first place. The large majority of time that I've got athletes coming to me, they're doing way more volume before than they will do with me, because the quality of the work is pretty poor in terms of their ability to execute exercises and reps at a high standard. And the biggest thing with training is just the accuracy. It's the accuracy of every rep. It's the accuracy of having the intent of what we're trying to contract and the ranges we're spending time in. A good example would be, I don't know if you've seen on my Instagram the other day, I posted a guy called Zachariah, who's just turned pro, and he put 34 kilos on in 1 year with me. He's gone from being a natural athlete to being enhanced. But the enhancement that was applied was, if I told you what he had used to put 34 kilos on, you would not believe what he used, i.e. the large majority of that time was just above TRT. And he put 34 kilograms of muscle on. But the reason why, and this guy's, genetically very gifted, like he's going to be a great pro.
Yeah.
The reason why,
I think the top comment was like, is this what it looks like to see a hyper responder? Some shit like that.
Yeah. One of the biggest reasons why was because, especially in Europe, the natties, the natural guys, they have to take their progress from other areas apart from PEDs. They have to be really diligent with recovery, with sleep, with food, with training. So he was training really well before, like accurately. He was, the intention of every set, the ability to generate tension in that working muscle. So when we put him in the right environment, his body just completely explodes in terms of growth. But I will have seasoned pros that have been to the Olympia that come to work with me, and they'll come over and fly over to the UK and train with me for 3 or 4 days, and it will be dreadful, like a train wreck in terms of quality, because the training that they've done till now for the last 10, 15, however many years has got them to this point in their career. So it has got them to third call out of the Olympia, for example, has got them to not placing at the Olympia, but being Olympia qualified. And for you to go from third call out to now first call out or second call out and jump up again, you can't keep doing the same stuff, because it's taking you to this ceiling of progress, but it's not going to take you beyond it. And a lot of those guys are guys that can come in and stack every machine and move weight around, and they're super strong, and even the girls as well. And when I start slowing things down and I start getting to train with more intention, I start getting to train with more accuracy and focusing on execution and focusing on how a muscle is being lengthened and shortened in a rep, their progress skyrockets drastically. And the cool thing is, in those situations, if I can get that athlete just as strong as they were previously, but now with every rep looking like that, the progress will be off the charts impressive. So it's not like, look, I've got to go get the pink dumbbells off the women's rack, and I've got to start concentration culling these 3 kilo pink dumbbells. Like, I want you to be the strongest guy in the gym, but I want every single rep that you're doing to look like this. And when you can do that, your progression will absolutely go through the roof.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's like, is this the mind to muscle connection that all the whole heads were talking about the whole time? It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I think I mean, I'm sure a lot of people in the audience do, but I think a lot of people in general just undervalue and don't understand just how much focus it actually requires, like every set. And Like there's almost like some actual merit to using pre-workout and stuff. But like I, for example, have noticed that even after training for so many years, I still have to try so hard to just like, I can almost feel like if I try hard that I normally do consistently, I'm like at like say like a 70%. Like if I focus extremely fucking hard, there's like an extra like 20% of like, I don't know, it feels like motor unit recruitment, but it's just like almost of just like being able to hit the muscle I need to hit while avoiding any of the other supporting muscle groups, or even like smaller things like the infraspinatus and the supraspinatus and the subscapularis and all these muscles that are fucking doing shit to your shoulders, giving me these damn shoulder injuries. Like it takes like an extreme amount of focus, and I feel like to upkeep that, I myself need to not talk to people, and when I'm on my phone, I'm just putting in my work, I'm just logging my workout. But other than that, like I have to be super present with it. So I think that's something that's been undervalued and just not really discussed very much when it comes to training.
Huge, yeah. I 100% agree. 100% agree. It's I think there are like training standards that people can hold themselves to that are probably much higher than most of their normal workouts week to week. And I think if you can start taking each workout and each session and each rep to those new standards and really challenging yourself, not just the load that you're lifting, but what is actually happening between your ability to move from A to B. Mm-hmm. And you add to that like movement patterns being picked that are suitable for the athlete, that they can actually stabilize and execute and maintain accuracy. Like it's going to be a combination that you'll make a lot of progress from. Yeah.
I do have ADHD though, so maybe it's just easier for a lot of other people.
ADHD is a gift.
I'm just seeing some of these questions you've already talked about during the podcast, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm picking the ones that make sense. Why Galattery asks biggest blood work markers you look into and what you do if you see him. He has a typo. If you've seen them L or H levels, like if they're low or high.
Say again. The
biggest blood work markers you look into, and what you do if you see them low or high. I think he's trying to say.
High, right? Okay.
It says L or H levels.
Right. Low or high levels. Yeah, it sounds like an actual marker.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing we would do if we feel as though blood work correction wasn't happening at the speed that we would want would be, you just need to spend a longer period of time in the health phase, in the kind of quote unquote cruise phase. And maybe we need to adjust the protocol that we have in place to allow for those markers to restore quicker than they have been. So if you have been, for example, in the post-show phase running an athlete on, I don't know, they've reduced their testosterone to 300 milligrams a week to try and maintain a just above physiological to allow for some training progression and improved tissue retention in the health phase. And you run blood work at week 4 to check where sex hormones are, androgen to estrogen ratios, etc. And the testosterone is like coming back at 17 nanomole, but we're also in a position where other markers like lipid management, liver enzymes, renal function, kidney, cystatin C, EGFR, etc. Those are not moving at the rate that you want them to in terms of improvements. Maybe we need to reduce the milligram per week even more to allow for that restoration, or maybe we need to add in, it could be organ support related, but 9 times out of 10 it's just directly driven over how aggressive you're being with the milligram use. So if they're high, i.e. they're not good, you just need to spend more time in the health phase, and you need to adjust your approach or reduce your protocol to allow them to restore as you wish. But also, I've also had those situations where I've run blood work if I run a 4-week and an 8-week blood panel post show, sometimes you run the 4-week one and everything's sweet, and you're like, oh bloody hell, it's restored way quicker than I anticipated it would. Maybe we can start the off-season phase a little bit earlier. Maybe we need to start. Maybe we can start next week or week 6 or week 7. But if it's slow, you just got to spend more time in the health phase, and don't ignore the blood work because I've put on my timeline off season starts this week, so if I get the blood work back, it's like, yeah, it's good enough, we'll start anyway. You can't keep on doing that because it's going to keep on eating away at the athlete with longevity. Like if it's not right, adjust your timeline around the blood work. Don't adjust the blood work tolerance around the timeline.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Beige NZ asks, insulin pre and post use, either moderate, minimal, or no fat at all. Great coach, by the way. Let's fucking go.
I would say moderate, minimal to moderate. I'd still want some dietary fat there for like stability of glucose, particularly moving into the training window. Post training can be minimal or trace fats or minimal. Because I'm not as concerned at that point because we're not training after it, and the meal after the post-training meal is probably happening in the next 2.5 hours anyway. So that's going to stabilize glucose in response to that. But pre-training, particularly if we're not using an intra-workout, like a cyclodextrin or something like that, I would definitely want some fat in that pre-training meal, yeah.
Okay. So, Rice Krispie treat.
Well, you can definitely use them in the pre-training meal, yeah, and the post-training. You can use them in every meal if you want. It's the elixir.
Maybe I should join you. You sound like a great coach. You don't have. I actually didn't know anything about this, but so you don't have to dive into this, especially deeply, if you don't feel comfortable or anything. But there's a couple people asking. Dion asks, why did Eric stop working with you 5 weeks out of the Cali Pro?
Me and Eric are very good friends. I think we got to a point where my personal relationship with him, like I turned Eric pro, I think we worked together I think the first show we did together was Toronto 2022. So we worked together for like 4 years, maybe. I've known him for 4 or 5 years. I think it just got to a point where the relationship in terms of coach to client is less effective when there is a lot more of a personal relationship involved. I've always found this with other clients as well. If it's an effective coaching relationship, like I can be your friend, I can be someone that has a very close relationship with you, that's a lot of trust and a lot of respect, but I'm always the coach, and the decisions are always, it's always coach to athlete or coach to client. I think when those lines are skewed in terms of them becoming a close friend, and what Eric has done for the last 4 or 5 years, the decision making ability becomes much harder to manage in terms of there is the ability to be objective in that decision. It becomes more complex. And I think I don't know if it was 5 weeks out, if it was closer to the stage. I think it might be closer to the stage. We just came to an agreement. It was the right move for him to move on, and also, most importantly, to move on to someone that he could see more in person. Because I've only ever seen him compete in person once. I went to Toronto with him, but I've not been able to travel out to. The shows thereafter, particularly when he turned pro. I think he turned pro in Mexico.
Yeah.
But it does make a big difference. Like when you have someone that can see you in person for check-ins, like the guys and girls in the UK, like I'll see athletes on a semi-regular basis for in-person check-ins in prep or the off-season. It does make a huge difference when you can have that in-person assessment, in-person touch. So I feel as though it's going to be a good step for him to continue making progress. And he's a great athlete, man. Like he's got some of the most insane genetics I've ever seen in my life. He is someone that, have you ever met him in person?
Yeah, he and I are homies. Yeah,
Oh,
we used to hang out and work out together in LA all the time.
Nice. So like off-season physique, he has probably got the craziest, the craziest muscle bellies you'll ever see in your life. Just
so
because
round.
it's just great. Like to carry that size, but also look like aesthetically pleasing at the same time is wild.
Kind of rare for a white guy, honestly.
It is. I know. I always told him that. I was like, you've not got white guy genetics, but somehow it looks like this. Because when he turned pro, he turned pro in bodybuilding, but the first prep we did was in classic, and his weight cap was like obscene. He had to lose so much body weight to turn pro in classic. And he won the California regional, he won the overall. And then in Toronto, like the look was a little bit too far gone for him to hold that body weight. So we just moved into open, but he went from like, I think his weight cap was like 218 pounds or something. He went from like 218 pounds to back up to like 280, 285 and was in really good control of body composition and still lean at 285. So it shows you the amount of tissue he can carry. Yeah, he's got a really, really unique look, crazy rear double bicep, crazy legs, crazy arms. If I could have his arms, I would choose his arms over anyone else in the world.
Oh, that's so funny. I say the same thing.
Yeah. Crazy.
Train with DH says no question, but he and Naz will 100% win an O or multiple within the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, let's see, man. Let's see. It's exciting. Very exciting.
Are you coaching Laszlo?
Yes.
Ah, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
His fucking physique and his lats are just nuts, dude.
I know. He's got great physique. He's a guy that I don't know how he's not won more shows than he has.
No one does.
I love his structure and his physique.
Right. He looks great on stage. I don't understand either.
Yeah. It's the main thing for this year is I'm going to take him to the States instead of Europe because he's always done European shows. So we're going to just go to a completely different judging panel, just get him in front of different people and see if we can get better outcomes from that because his physique is incredible. His physique is incredible. I
love that. I think that's a great idea, actually.
Just get him in front of new people. Yeah,
yeah, for sure. Adam BO369 asks, "What do you feel are?" I'm kind of trying to rephrase his thing into more of a question. What do you feel is the difference between UK and US competitors and coaches?
I think it's a lot more similar now. 2 or 3 years ago, I think there was a gap. I think it's a lot more similar now. I know like loads of colleagues and friends that are very top level coaches in the US. I think before there was probably a tendency of US coaches being more assertive with drug use. If I were taking athletes on from the US, the protocols that I'd be sent back then would be like, scratch your head type stuff. It happens a lot less now, and probably because the large majority of athletes that circulate that I would come in contact with, I know the people that were coaching them before, and they are really good coaches. So I think there's less of a gap now. There's more education available. People are learning more. People are coaching more. With more time coaching, you kind of sharpen your skill set, sharpen your tools with that. So I think there's a lot less of a gap now. I think the UK is probably known for a certain style of training approach, being a little bit lower in volume, which is cool because it's like part of our heritage with Dorian back in the day, and that's never really left.
Right.
But yeah, like I think there are more similarities and differences now.
I have a theory that could be totally wrong, but I feel like people that have less melanin in their skin, basically white people, tend to have genetics that lean more towards having fast twitch fibers, and us rice carriers have some fucking slow twitch fucking fibers. I got my genetics tested, and I have this thing called muscle impairment, muscle performance impairment or some shit like that. I
Right.
don't know.
Okay.
And basically, it's just stating that I have a higher chance of having a more predominant amount of slow twitch fibers and am more based for endurance. So I don't know, but I've always felt like before I got this test that I resonate more and feel like I gain more on higher volume.
Yep.
So I
And
don't know.
that's the beauty of it. Like, this is where, especially when you're onboarding an athlete and you're going through, like, even the consultation stages, looking at what has worked in the past and looking at athlete preference. Athlete preference for training style, much like diet. If an athlete sends you a food diary or a sample diet of what they're having now, and you change all the food groups they've never had before, probably going to find it difficult for them to lock into and engage with the plan at the start, and the digestion is going to be all over the place. It's going to be unpredictable. Training is very similar, where whatever you have done in the past, you've probably leaned towards things that you enjoy, that you feel as though work well for your body. And you, more than anyone, know instinctually what feels right and what doesn't feel right. And that you've got to take that into account there in terms of program design, because the training is like N=1 for training is, it has got to be bespoke to the athlete in terms of what they enjoy and what the body responds well to. And it may take you a little bit of time to actually find what that best response is, but you usually find the best response in what you enjoy doing. And if I've got a guy that comes to me and they're like, look, I hate low volume training. I don't feel as though I do enough in the gym. I don't feel as though I get enough of a pump. It's not going to be a guy that I go in and say, right, we're doing 1 to 2 working sets on the muscle group, because he's going to hate it. And if he hates it, he's not going to put the effort in to actually apply himself in the program. So, it's a cool thing with training. Like this, if you got all the athletes in every division, in every top 10 in the Olympia, and you said, right, write down on a questionnaire how you train, I bet there's hundreds of different styles and formats of training that are being done there for every top level athlete. So it doesn't really matter how you package it up. The biggest thing is the accuracy and the effort. The details can be individualized per, in each individual athlete.
Gotcha. Awesome. Last question. The real conde? Oh, shit, dude. I know it's more benign than the way this guy asks, but
yeah.
How do your guys pack in so much quality tissue in such a short time?
You approach the off season like you do prep. You approach the off season with the same level of diligence and communication and standards and accuracy as you do prep. And that's, goes across the board. The training stuff that we've spoken about, the diet stuff that we've spoken about, management of body composition, keeping the athletes responsive in the off season, all of that, is massively influential. But the biggest thing is, if you are on it 100% in contest prep, 4 weeks out, 3 weeks out, 2 weeks out, peak week, etc. Like, I want the same level of diligence that you have in prep through the entire off season. So if you're doing 6 months of off season, it is just a continuation of the same process. It's not you missing check-ins. It's not you not filling out your data log. It's not you half-fasting sessions. It's not, I'll follow the diet 6 days and I'll bin off the 7th and I'll just go and eat off plan for today. The people that are really hungry to succeed in terms of not missing a beat will be the ones that make the most progress, and that will never change. And a lot of that is just the standards they have for themselves. And it's like the 1% differences. It's not even the bigger things. It's not the drugs. The training is a massive part of it, but like, it's the lifestyle stuff. It's the sleep stuff. It's the digestion stuff. It's the hitting your steps. It's the doing your cardiovascular work. It's your stretching. It's doing your mobility. It's getting your treatment. It's getting to bed on time. It's making sure sleep quality is in check. All that stuff, if you do that over and over again for a long period of time, makes a huge difference to your ability to progress as an athlete.
Yeah. I feel like these days the off-season drugs all kind of like look about the same.
Yeah.
For everybody.
Yeah.
There's various sweet spots, but other than that, yeah, everything looks pretty damn similar.
Yeah.
I ask everybody one last question at the end of every podcast, but if you were to disappear from the world tomorrow and you had one message you could send to the entire world today, what would the message be?
Oh, that's a good question. I think goes for anything in life, whether it's a coach, whether it's an athlete. You just have to have the ability to back yourself first, because if you can't have confidence in your own ability, then nobody else will. And that comes and rubs off a lot with your own athletes and the people around you, because the level of conviction you have with what you say and what you do in life, but also it relates directly to coaching, people will feed off that, and people will feed off that energy. And it's just the same as if I was in peak week with you in person, and I was like scratching my head thinking, I think this is the right decision. I think this might work. What is that going to do to your psychology? Then if I say, look, this is a game plan, this is going to work, this is my thought process, this is what we're going to do. You're like, sweet, this makes sense. I've got full confidence in this. Body language and how you act and your ability to back yourself has such a big trajectory in your life in general. And I think a lot of times when people miss the mark, or people don't achieve things in life, or people, whether it's business or coaching, whatever it might be, it's just because you don't have the confidence in your ability to do it. And confidence just comes with work and work ethic and not giving any other answer, a chance.
Yeah.
And I think last couple of years for me, I've just had to prove to myself, like, do you have the ability to work with these top guys? Do you have the ability to deliver there? And every time that you do it, it's just another little bit of confidence going, like, you could do this. In any situation now, it's just you walk in with more confidence, you got more experience, you got more conviction, and it feeds off on the athlete as well. But it holds some weight there for a message in life, for anything that you do in your life. It's like, you've got to back yourself first before anything else can happen.
Awesome, man. I love that. Thank you for saying that. I almost feel like I needed that message from you. Honestly.
Good.
It's like a fucking spiritual awakening. Well, where can everybody find you, and where would you like them to go?
Yes. So Instagram, if you type in www.teamprocoach.com or put in Team Pro Coach on Instagram, you can see our team page. You can see all of our coaches. Mine will be under Calum at teamprocoach.com. We've got loads of amazing physique coaches, bodybuilding coaches, prep coaches that work within the team, specializing in both enhanced and non-enhanced athletes, male and female. And then we do have two worldwide online education entities that coach and teach and mentor coaches. So if you're a PT and you're not a prep coach, you're a PT and you're either on the gym floor or online working as a transformation coach, the ICM, Institute of Coaching Mastery, the ICM education is where we house our PT qualification and our physique coaching qualification. And if you are a prep coach, if you put into Instagram ProIQ or ProIQ Hub, www.proiqeducation.com, that is our full accreditation for prep coaches to come and learn how we coach and how we manipulate everything from training to nutrition to PEDs to blood work to everything. It's a 10 module, 249 lecture video accreditation where you get your own certificate, etc. at the end. We do actually have the next, because it's open and closed door, we don't open it all the time. The next opening is actually on June 12th. So if people are interested, you can find the link in my bio and head on to the landing page and read about it.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. This was great.
All good. Thanks for your time, man. I enjoyed it a lot. Hopefully you can get some sleep tonight.
Yeah, definitely will. Sorry for keeping you for so long.
No, all good, man. All good. Pleasure.